Most people end the day by collapsing into distraction, scrolling endlessly in bed, replaying mistakes with shame, or avoiding reflection altogether because the silence feels too loud. The whole evening disappears into noise, and the day leaves no lesson behind. Seneca offered a different path, a deliberate practice that turns the close of the day into a moment of wisdom instead of drift. It is not about judging yourself harshly. It is about seeing clearly while the day is still fresh enough to understand and far enough away to understand it well. Reflection gives the evening a purpose that scrolling never can. In On Anger, especially Book 3, Seneca describes reviewing the day as if he were both a judge and a friend examining evidence. He lived much of his life in the political intensity of Rome, and later served as advisor to Nero, so he understood pressure, conflict, and moral compromise in a very real way. That background makes his evening practice more than a calming ritual. It is a discipline forged in the middle of power, fear, and responsibility. Each night, he would lie in bed and question himself about the day that had passed. He would ask what he did well, what he did badly, and what he could do better tomorrow. He imagined speaking to himself honestly, but not cruelly, as if he were both the one being examined and the one doing the examining. The tone was serious but humane. Seneca wanted progress, not punishment, and he believed that a frank conversation with oneself could produce both. Evening is the ideal time for reflection because the events of the day are still fresh, but the strongest emotional charge has begun to fade. Psychologists often describe this as the difference between hot cognition and cold cognition. When we are in the middle of an event, the brain is heated by emotion, urgency, and self-protection. Later, with distance, we can think more clearly and fairly. This is why the same conversation can feel unbearable at 2 p.m. and yet manageable at 9 p.m. Evening gives you just enough separation to see the day honestly without losing the details that matter. It sits in the narrow window between immediate reaction and complete forgetting. That timing makes the review especially powerful. You are close enough to remember, but calm enough to learn. This is also why the Stoics preferred reflection after action was over. Clarity arrives more easily when the emotional storm has settled. The practice becomes simple when you return to 3 questions, but each one does a different kind of work. First, what did I do well today? This is where you notice small wins that are easy to miss. Answering a difficult email with patience, keeping your temper in traffic, making time for a child or partner, or sticking to a promise to yourself. Second, where did I fall short? This is not an invitation to shame. It is a chance to be honest about where you drifted from your values. Whether that was snapping at someone, procrastinating on important work, or numbing out with distraction. Third, what will I do differently tomorrow? That final question turns insight into action, which is what makes the whole practice useful. The order matters because it begins with recognition of the good, moves into honest review, and ends with forward motion. If you start with failure, you often become defensive or discouraged. If you end without a plan, the reflection fades into sentiment. Together, the 3 questions create a complete feedback loop. Notice, evaluate, adjust. Over time, that loop builds wisdom one night at a time. This practice only works when reflection stays different from rumination. In clinical psychology, rumination is often linked to depression and anxiety because it keeps the mind locked in repetitive, self-critical loops that feel active but solve nothing. The brain can begin circling the same emotional track, replaying the same scene, and reinforcing the same mood without reaching insight or resolution. Reflection, by contrast, is structured, time-bound, and purpose-driven. It asks a question, examines the answer, and then stops. Rumination sounds like, "Why am I always like this?" While reflection sounds like, "What happened? What did I learn? And what do I do next?" The same scenario can produce both. If you had an awkward meeting, rumination replays every sentence and turns it into evidence that you are failing. Reflection identifies what triggered the discomfort, what response would work better next time, and then closes the notebook. One drains energy while the other creates direction. The Stoic review is designed to break the loop, not deepen it. The Stoic focus is not on reviewing what happened to you, but on how you responded to what happened. The traffic jam is not the issue. The reaction is. The critical email is not the issue. The interpretation and response are. The same is true in work, relationships, health, and money. You cannot always control whether a project falls apart, whether a friend is moody, whether your body feels off, or whether an unexpected bill arrives. But you can control what you do with each of these moments. This is the locus of control at the heart of Stoic practice and modern cognitive behavioral therapy alike. Move attention away from the uncontrollable event and toward the controllable response. This shift is empowering because it returns agency to the one place you can actually act. It is not denial of reality. It is disciplined focus on your part in it. Starting with wins matters more than people realize, and positive psychology research repeatedly shows that noticing what is going right supports resilience and motivation. Humans naturally have a negativity bias, which means we remember threats and mistakes more vividly than effort, kindness, or progress. That's useful for survival, but it's not always useful for growth. If you skip this step, you may become blind to your own virtue and begin assuming you did nothing well. So name the small things. You listened instead of interrupting. You sent the hard message instead of avoiding it. You drank water instead of numbing out. You took a walk instead of spiraling. These may seem minor, but they are evidence of character in motion. Recognizing them builds self-efficiency, the sense that your actions can shape outcomes, and that sense makes future effort more likely. When you review your shortcomings, be specific and avoid turning behavior into identity. "I interrupted my partner during a conversation" is useful. "I'm a terrible person" is not. "I skipped the workout because I was exhausted and unprepared" is more actionable than "I have no discipline." The difference matters because shame says, "I am the problem," while guilt says, "That behavior needs to change." Seneca understood that balance. He was firm enough to tell the truth, but compassionate enough to keep the truth usable. A good walkthrough looks like this. What was the trigger? What was my response? What would have been a better alternative? And what will I do next time? Maybe the trigger was HALT. Hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. And the real issue was that your body or mood was already depleted before the mistake happened. Maybe you sent a sharp message after a stressful day, then realized a pause would have helped. The point is not to defend the failure or dramatize it, but to study it until it becomes a lesson. This is how self-correction turns into growth. Writing the reflection down amplifies its power because writing forces clarity and supports memory consolidation. Thoughts that feel fuzzy in the head become more precise once they are placed on paper, and that precision helps the brain organize experience into something usable. Marcus Aurelius used writing as a form of philosophical therapy, and his meditations show what happens when reflection becomes language. You do not need to be a writer to benefit. If full paragraphs feel daunting, bullet points are enough. If you prefer, dictate a voice note and transcribe it later. Or write 3 simple sentences. What went well? What went poorly? What comes next? The format matters less than the act. Over weeks and months, patterns start to appear that would be invisible day to day. The same triggers, the same habits, the same opportunities for change. Writing lets time reveal what the moment hides. To make this sustainable, start with just 5 minutes and treat it like a habit, not a performance. In habit formation terms, you need a cue, a routine, and a reward. Cue the end of your day. Routine the 3 questions. Reward the sense of closure and calm. Implementation intentions help too. Decide in advance. After I brush my teeth, I will sit down and reflect. Or, before bed, I will open my journal. Habit stacking makes the practice easier because it attaches the new behavior to something you already do. If you are too tired, shorten it. If you forgot, put the journal on your pillow or set a phone reminder. If you had a bad day, that is all the more reason to keep it simple and keep it going. Consistency beats intensity because the brain learns repetition, not drama. A 2-day rule can help. Never miss twice in a row. The goal is not a perfect streak. It is a reliable rhythm that fits your real life. Over time, the evening review starts revealing patterns you could not see when each day felt isolated. You may discover that you are most irritable when you skip lunch, most avoidant when a conversation feels emotionally loaded, most creative in the early morning, or most distracted when your phone is nearby at night. Those insights help you make better choices before the problem starts. Self-awareness compounds. One small realization leads to a better decision, which leads to a better habit, which makes the next insight clearer to notice. Eventually, you shift from reactive living to proactive living. Instead of being surprised by your own behavior, you begin to anticipate it and adjust in real time. You might pause before replying because you know you are tired, or delay a decision because you know your mood is clouding judgment. In that sense, the practice makes you your own therapist and coach, not by replacing anyone, but by training your inner observer to become more skilled, more honest, and more helpful. Many people want the practice, but they hit predictable obstacles. If you are too tired at night, move the reflection earlier. shorten it to 2 minutes, or make it easier by using just one question. If you feel worse after reflecting, you may be ruminating instead of reflecting. So return to the structure and end with a concrete next step. If you cannot think of anything you did well, start smaller. You got through the day. You answered one difficult text. You drank enough water. You showed up. If you keep forgetting, set a phone reminder. Stack it after brushing your teeth, or put the journal on your pillow so you can't miss it. If it feels self-indulgent, reframe it as training. Athletes review game footage, musicians review rehearsals, and leaders review decisions. The point is not to sit in self-absorption. It is to improve your judgment. Most obstacles are not signs that the practice is wrong. They are signs that the practice needs to be smaller, simpler, and more repeatable. The evening practice becomes even more powerful when it links to the morning practice outlined in a previous video on this channel. Morning sets intention. Evening measures reality against that intention. Together, they create a complete daily loop. You begin with purpose, then you review what happened, and the review informs the next morning's preparation. For example, you might begin the day intending to be patient with difficult people. At night, you notice where patience held and where it broke down. The next morning, you refine the intention. I will pause before responding when I feel rushed. That is how Stoics train themselves, not through one perfect moment, but through repeated cycles of anticipation, action, review, and adjustment. The result is not just better days, but a better way of living through the days you already have. Once the daily habit is in place, you can add a higher level of review. Each month, look back across the last 30 days and ask what patterns keep showing up, what systems are helping, and what habits need adjustment. At that level, you are not just reviewing individual moments, you are reviewing the shape of your life. Once a year, go broader still. Ask how you have grown, what themes keep appearing, what values have become stronger, and what deserves your attention next year. Marcus Aurelius's Meditations can be read as a long, ongoing review of his own mind and conduct, and Seneca's letters often read like reflections on philosophical progress over time. This is how days become decades of growth. Small nightly reviews feed larger seasonal reviews, and larger reviews make the entire life more deliberate. The ultimate goal of evening reflection is not merely productivity or self-improvement. It is character. The Stoics cared about becoming good people, wise, courageous, just, and temperate, because those are the qualities that make a life worthwhile regardless of circumstances. Evening reflection is how you measure yourself against those virtues. It shows you when you are drifting from your values and gives you a chance to course correct before drift becomes identity. In that sense, the practice is ethical as much as practical. It asks not only, what did I do, but who am I becoming? That question is ancient, but the need is timeless. To live deliberately, to grow consciously, to become who you want to be. In a world that rewards distraction with reactivity, choosing this discipline is radical. It says that your character matters more than your impulses. Over time, this practice changes lives in small but compounding ways. One person notices they are most irritable when hungry, starts eating better, and suddenly their relationships become less tense because they stop snapping at the people around them. Another realizes they have been avoiding difficult conversations, begins addressing issues earlier, and becomes a stronger leader because problems no longer silently accumulate. A third sees that they have been living on autopilot, making choices by default instead of intention, and slowly rediscovers meaning by choosing their days more consciously. These are not dramatic overnight transformations. They are the result of tiny daily insights turning into better patterns. That is the real power of the evening review. It takes what looks small tonight and turns it into a different life over time. Tonight, before you sleep, take 5 minutes and make it simple enough to actually do. Ask the 3 questions. What went well? Where did I fall short? And what will I do differently tomorrow? Write down brief answers, not perfect ones. Do that for 7 nights in a row, and if one night feels messy, keep going anyway. Do not judge the quality of the reflection, just build the habit. By day 7, notice what you have learned about yourself, even if it is only one small pattern. And if you want, share your experience or insights with others, because practice becomes stronger when it is spoken, witnessed, and remembered. Every day is a teacher. If you take time to listen, the evening review is how you turn experience into wisdom and wisdom into character. This is what we practice at Stoic for Life. Most people end the day by collapsing into distraction, scrolling endlessly in bed, reflecting, replaying mistakes with shame, or avoiding reflection altogether because the silence feels too loud. The whole evening disappears into noise, and the day leaves no